Technology. I had two plants and they did their job. Technology. Woo! That's my first ad lib, since Izzy was talking about technology there being an important part of what we're doing next. So I'm here basically to introduce a genuinely very exciting session. We perhaps use exciting and being super excited a lot in this industry, but I can tell you I really, really am. Teeny bit nervous as well. So we're about to show you something which is pretty cutting edge. It's pretty new. Hopefully you haven't seen the two sides of this together before. And a quick disclaimer, this will be live AI technology. Things could go wrong. I hope they don't. If you see me with juggling balls, that means I'm trying to distract you because something's gone wrong. And a final disclaimer is we're genuinely going to be having a conversation with an AI here, and we can't always be responsible for the language that is used. So far, we've been okay, but anything particularly controversial or any foul language in there, we're all adults. We apologize for it ahead. So to set up this next session, I'm going to talk very briefly about eras. Not the Taylor Swift kind, not the fact that I'm entering my amateur barista era with my new espresso equipment I hope to get for my birthday. We're talking about how there's been several eras in the marketing space, in advertising. Basically, I think we like to think about we've stepped through 4 different eras in how we use insights to create great marketing and great advertising for consumers. So the first one, very famously characterized by Mad Men, it was gut feel. We call that the era of intuition. This was like Marlboro Man, giant Coca-Cola billboards and mass reach. Secondly, we got into the psychographic era. So this was starting to think about what people cared about and felt. And that's where we got into interesting pen portraits like adventurous thrill seekers or security-conscious parents. We then became obsessed with behavioral factors, and that was characterized by the internet. The internet came along and we could understand what people were doing, not just what they were thinking or feeling. So this was massive amounts of data. This is when the nerds came to inherit the earth. It was fantastic for my career at the time. And at its best, I think it's fair to say that it created some really good, really personalized advertising that it felt like consumers were we felt like we were being talked to in our language. At its worst, we all got chased around the internet by some bad retargeting at some point as we kind of refined these things. So you've heard already today, we're now in the 4th era. I think this is a real revolution. We call this the algorithmic era, and that is characterized by pace, by volume, by being able to move at the speed of culture. And it is, I made light of technology at the start, it is being driven, or at least the capability is being driven by access to technology and the power of technology. For a couple of decades, we've been able to use Moore's law as a general guide of where technology is going to go. So that dictates broadly that every 2 years, technology power will double. That's kind of in the bin now. With agentic AI, which is perhaps the most fast-moving of these technologies, we're looking at sort of 3 months. So that's an 8-fold increase in the power of technology to do the things that we want it to do. Now, of course, even as the technology person, just because we can do something doesn't mean we necessarily should. So that's what we're going to talk about in a moment. We're going to talk about how this access to technology, this access to information in the algorithmic era, it gives us the ability to make more decisions more quickly based on more information. My wife always tells me that more is more, Ben, so that's good. But we have to be clear that if that more is bad quality, if it's bad quality information, it generates bad quality insights, and nothing can make up for bad strategy. So I'm about to step off the stage. I will introduce 2 fantastic speakers in a moment, and there'll be a third that follows. We're going to talk about this dichotomy of how you generate great marketing, great advertising through great insight. We're going to refer to some of the platforms that we've built in-house. You'll hear Dentsu.connect mentioned. This is the basis for how we bring together insights with media and creative, and how we do that in a super modern way. So I will welcome to the stage our Global Head of Insights, Rachel Lever, and Carat UK CSO, Matt Willifer.
everyone. Just to be clear, following Ben's intro, I'm not the live AI technology. I'm not a hologram. We've got that kind of coming up in a moment. So I'm going to start with something you've heard a few times today around the algorithmic era. So algorithmically bought media, according to our latest report, is increasing every year. So 79% of media will be bought algorithmically next year. But that is really just the tip of the algo era iceberg. If you helicopter out a bit, I'm going to talk briefly about two characteristics that define. So the first of those is about kind of more signals. So with all the scrolling and liking and viewing and sharing and buying, etc., that we do, there are billions and billions of signals. So just today in the UK, 27.5 billion signals will be generated for us to get our teeth into. And consumers kind of increasingly expect the very best companies to be in sync with those signals. So obviously on digital platforms, but also in terms of personally relevant advertising, in terms of brands understanding and making a positive contribution to the things that people really care about. And with more signals comes the potential for more understanding. So not just what, but why. Not just what happened then, but what's happening right now. Not just kind of sort of neat, simple, structured data, but kind of messy, nuanced, human, unstructured data like comments. And something we'll be talking a bit about later, not just personalized ID data, but data and insight in all its kind of sort of glory and richness. We'll also kind of be talking about how AI can help us make sense of all those signals rather than be overwhelmed or confused by them, which is obviously a possibility. So the first theme is more signals. The second theme is that for all these signals and all the huge amount of high-quality content that's out there, there's also a whole lot more slop, which is something I'm sure that we've all experienced. So repeated iterations of the same kind of content with little space for serendipity or surprise. Endless kind of advertising, trying to sell us stuff that we don't now want and maybe never did in the first place. And of course, AI-driven clickbait, which I'm sure we've all experienced. So over the weekend, I went looking for something that looked like it was the latest football highlights, only to be met when I clicked on it on some old footage of 70s players and some AI voiceover that felt like it was reading out something from Wikipedia. So the theme for this presentation is how we maximize the signals and minimize the slop. And we're going to be talking about sort of two halves of how we do that, how we harness the signals and how we help to kind of channel that into amazing creative work that avoids the slop. So for that to work, we need more than just data and AI. We need media and creative to work completely in sync with each other. So the old silos just won't cut it anymore. So we need media expertise that can commune with the algorithms, can really understand exactly what people want from different media at different moments, and can understand what brilliant native content looks like. And then we also need creatives who can work hand in hand, so from agency creatives to platform natives to production specialists, who can turn that into meaningfully different brand experiences. And as you can see from that huge stat up there, if you take our industry as a whole, that is not something that is being done as well as it could do at the moment. So 86% of advertisers report a lack of synchronization between those two different disciplines. So we're going to give you a glimpse now of how we do it by lifting kind of the bonnet on something we call a unified story system. So it's unified in that through Dentsu Connect, and we'll show you some, but not kind of all bits of Dentsu Connect in a few moments. Through this is a common data and technology platform that runs through everything and unites human intelligence, like us, with artificial intelligence, and unites insight, creative, media, and other disciplines as well, in the service of telling kind of brilliant brand stories. So stories that really grab people's attention and are fueled by surprising, non-obvious insight that a brand's competitors have not noticed or leveraged. As a parallel to this, you know, if you think about people who write novels or book writing, there is, of course, kind of sort of in the AI-driven age, a kind of a plethora of books that have been kind of sort of rushed out, written by purely by LLMs in service of making a quick buck. But also in the AI age, we also sort of see a new generation of authors who co-create with LLMs to lovingly craft their next novel. And I think as you look to kind of put together the different disciplines, that's how we like to work as well, kind of in Dentsu. So putting together AI and PI, artificial intelligence and personal intelligence. And how we kind of humans work at Dentsu increasingly isn't just, you know, obviously doing the things that AI is still not brilliant at, but also is how we put different elements of AI together. AI is not one thing, it's a whole raft of different technologies, and how we kind of architect them and put them together is increasingly kind of our role. So we're going to show how that works, and so that we don't betray any confidences, we've taken the liberty of inventing a brand new fictional fashion brand, Rowan Vale. Sounds exciting. Would you all like to wear Rowan Vale? If there's enough demand, we'll actually create it and put something out there. So Rowan Vale, if you think about it, kind of sort of going kind of toe to toe with the likes of Reiss. And one thing you should know about Rowan Vale is that they want to be defined not just by seasonal calendars, but by live cultural moments. They want to be the most culturally attuned fashion brand in the UK and be a challenger to the established competitors. So we're going to first run through our class-leading approach to audiences, and then we will show how we put the insight generated from that at the heart of the creative process. So without further ado, Rachel is going to introduce you to Poppy, the audience for Rowan Vale.
So, hello everyone. Just to give you an overview of who Poppy is. Poppy is a 24-year-old woman living in London. She's hugely ambitious and loves fashion. So we're going to talk to her live. Hey Poppy, really good to meet you. I'm Rachel. Would like to ask you a few questions if that's okay. So let's kick off by understanding kind of what your typical day looks like, please.
Hi Rachel, sure, I'd love to share. My typical day starts with a quick scroll on my phone while I wake up. I usually grab a coffee, get ready, and either head into the office or log on from home. My day is a mix of work tasks, chatting with colleagues, and just figuring things out as I go. After work, I might hit the gym, meet a friend, or just relax with something light to watch. Evenings are all about winding down and planning for the next day.
Great, thank you, Poppy. Now, we're working with a new brand called Rowan Vale, and they're super interested to understand your purchasing of, for example, what designer items have you bought in the last month or so, potentially what jewelry have you bought. Can you share your purchases, please?
I haven't made any specific purchases lately, but I've noticed that my friends are picking up some really cool pieces of jewelry to layer together. It's such a fun trend right now. I love the idea of mixing and matching different styles for a unique look.
Great, thank you. Now, I think we should give Poppy a round of applause because, I mean, this is the first time she's spoken in front of so many people. So thank you, Poppy. However, she was good, but maybe she didn't deserve so much applause. Her answers were kind of correct, but not totally correct. And while Poppy isn't listening, I'll let you into a secret. She was totally fueled by large language models, so LLMs. And whilst this helps us talk to her in a really human way, democratizes, her insights, what she's got to tell us, there are some three fundamental problems with this. Firstly, she's just providing a very generic insight. Now, if you think in an environment where brands need to be meaningfully different, they're not going to extract insights or anything new from the same data set that their competitors are working with. Secondly, she sounded plausible, but it was based on very limited information. There was nothing specific about the category, no unique data sets about the category we're operating in, or Ronan Vale itself in terms of how she feels about that brand, their brand. And finally, LLMs love to please. She would have answered us regardless of what data sets were behind us, and could have sent us in totally the wrong direction. So, we're going to go back to a slightly enhanced Poppy. So, hey, Poppy, we want to go back to a question we just asked you before. We'd really like to understand how much you've spent recently on maybe some designer items or jewelry in the last few months.
Oh, I've definitely treated myself a bit. I recently splurged on some stunning designer boots for around £500, which I absolutely love. I also picked up a cute piece of jewellery for about £150. I tend to buy more affordable jewellery regularly, especially from creators I follow on Instagram. It's all about mixing high and low,
So thank you, Poppy. Now, if you remember, our Poppy 1 or previous version was a bit vague about what she'd bought recently. However, what we've done here is we've uploaded a bit more information. We've uploaded some ID-based data, which gives information in terms of Poppy's purchases and browsing behavior. So now we know for sure what she's purchased. So let's go back to Poppy one more time and ask her a bit about when she's likely to wear these items she's bought. Hey, Poppy, what occasions are you most likely to wear those designer boots and jewelry that you bought recently?
I usually wear my designer boots for special occasions like dinners out, events, or when I want to feel a bit more confident. As for the jewellery, I'll wear that for similar occasions, especially when I know I'll be seen or photographed. It's all about that effortless, elevated vibe.
Great, thank you, Poppy. So again, we know that Poppy 2 was more accurate than Poppy 1 in that she was pretty accurate in terms of what she'd bought recently. However, I'm not entirely sure she was accurate about the occasions that she wears those jewelry and those new designer boots she bought, but we'll come on to that in a minute. Now, as I've already mentioned, we uploaded ID-based data into Poppy's knowledge bank, and whilst ID data is super, super powerful. For example, it will enable a company that has a huge amount of customer data to cross-sell, upsell their products, target them, and then know whether they bought them or not. It will allow FMCG companies to use club card data or loyalty data, for example, to maybe target competitor brands or people who are buying competitor products so they can steal from them. So the data sets are huge. However, a system based purely on identity doesn't give us everything I need. And there are two main reasons for that. Firstly, if you think about it, we are on different platforms a lot of the time, we have different logons, and so identity data has problems matching and linking all those IDs across all those different platforms. So while they're incredibly large in themselves, it means that potentially if we want to address them or find those people across the different platforms, we get very limited reach. So in fact, we can reduce our reach by over 60% by just using ID data on itself. However, there is one more fundamental limitation with this. It provides a one-dimensional view of people. Now, individuals don't move across the world as a fixed identity. Rather, we're multiple selves. So if you think of yourself, you're a different person at work, at home, you will have operated among different communities, online, offline, micro-communities, you have different logons, different platforms. Actually, Gen Z have kind of more than one profile per platform. So the kind of different identities is just kind of mushrooming. And as people traverse these different platforms with their different identities, they're kind of meeting brands and products, and they're developing and building kind of association with those branded products and building trust with them as well. And therefore, to cater for this kind of inherent complexity, any effective audience strategy must reflect this kind of multidimensionality of people. So that explains, Poppy 2 was better than Poppy 1. However, it didn't give us the complete picture by incorporating all those communities that Poppy, who we're about to meet, is present in. So let's meet, and I promise this is the final and complete Poppy 3. Hey, Poppy, nice to see you again. I just want to again go back to a question we had previously. When are you most likely to wear designer pieces and jewelry?
Hey Rachel, I mostly wear designer pieces and jewellery for everyday things like workwear or weekend outings. It's all about enhancing my look and feeling confident. I'd say around 65% of the time that's when I'm rocking those pieces. I do wear them for special occasions too, but let's be real, those don't happen every day.
Now, if you remember, Poppy 2 said she wore those kind of designer boots or kind of jewelry just for special occasions. However, the complete Poppy, with the additional kind of consumer information, said she wore it every day. Now, think what a massive business opportunity Ronan Vale would have missed if they just targeted their comms and their kind of strategy on those special occasions. So actually now, let's go back to Poppy again, because we know that Poppy is kind of enhanced with lots of kind of cultural information. So
oh, no worries. Just let me...
I'm glad she does that, because it proves she's live. Poppy, we know you're really interested in fashion. Can you tell us culturally what's happening in fashion in the UK and in particular in London at the moment? We know London Fashion Week happened a couple of weeks ago. Can you tell us what you've seen?
Absolutely. London Fashion Week was super exciting this year. We're seeing a big shift from minimalism to maximalism, with bold colours and layered styles taking over. Designers like Harris Reed and Simone Rocha showcased vibrant collections that really embrace individuality. There's also a focus on sustainability, with more brands using recycled materials and lab-grown diamonds. It's all about self-expression and standing out, which I love.
And Poppy, you're super knowledgeable about all this. Who do you follow? Where do you find your inspiration to understand these trends and find these trends?
I love following influencers like Eleanor Calder for fashion inspo. She's got such a great eye for style. I also keep an eye on social media, especially TikTok and Instagram, where trends pop up so quickly. Plus, I love checking out fashion blogs and websites to stay updated on what's happening in the industry. It's all about finding what resonates with me and my personal style.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Poppy. I just want to ask you one final question, because Joe's about to come up and talk about, what content you like to see. So I'd really appreciate your fashion in terms of what type of advertising you appreciate and what you value in advertising, fashion advertising and maybe jewelry advertising yourself.
Honestly, I'm all about real representation in fashion ads. I want to see women of all shapes, sizes and backgrounds, not just the typical flawless models. It feels way more relatable and authentic. I also can't stand the greenwashing nonsense. I want brands to be genuine about their sustainability efforts. If an ad showcases real women with flaws, I'm way more likely to connect with it and support the brand.
Now, I think we should give final Poppy one last round of applause, because, I agree with her last point too. So thank you. So as you can see, Poppy 3 gave us a complete picture of her relationship with jewelry, how much she spent on jewelry, when she wears, the occasion she wears jewelry, and in terms of the kind of trends that she's following. And to ensure that, at Dentsu, we encompass this kind of multi-dimensionality of people, we kind of classify our data sets into the 4 Cs. So consumer data, which gives us kind of a detailed understanding of kind of motivations, attitudes, media consumption. And this is where Poppy told us that, you know, the occasions that she's more likely to wear the jewelry and those kind of nice boots she bought. Commerce data, which helps us understand, as we discussed, kind of potentially competitor battlegrounds, targeting competitor buyers, for example. And this is where we understood how much Poppy bought on those boots and on that jewelry in the last few months accurately. Thirdly, cultural data. And this is super important. I think we heard it in the panel as well. And in order to remain relevant, brands need to understand what's happening in culture and follow trends and keep up with those trends, especially a fashion brand. And potentially Rowan & Vale, understanding kind of all those cultural signals, might unearth kind of new kind of white space opportunities where people might want to wear some of their products. And we saw how Poppy very eloquently described everything she saw in terms of trends happening around London and from London Fashion Week. And finally, kind of Rowan & Vale's data themselves to understand, as we discussed before, how their customers are acting and enabling them to cross-sell, upsell, and target their own customers. So kind of all these trillions of data points kind of power our media planning tools and kind of right through to activation. However, they also power the content we develop. And I'm going to pass over to Joe Newcomb now, kind of a guru in creative tech, who's going to talk how he's using all these data points to fuel the content that's generated.